Hello again, Struck Pup. Today I'm bringing you another build video for Warhammer Chaosbane, and this one is for the Mage Elontir, and that's actually a rework or an update of a previous build of mine from December 2019 called the Riftwalker Elementalist, and this is why I decided to call this build Riftwalker 2.0. So it's a very mobile build. It's probably one of the most fun builds in the game to play if you like mobility and if you like doing damage as you are moving. The way this works is, as you can see, we're using the Bel Khoradris set, which gives us the heroic step between worlds, which means there's no cooldown and it turns into an energy cost skill. So each time we teleport, we leave behind a sigil. This sigil does damage over time. We also do an explosion or like a shockwave where we land, so we're doing damage and damage over time. That's why I'm using gear with mixture between damage over time and damage blessings. So you might want to experiment with just flat damage blessings or just damage over time blessings. I'm using 6 items blessed for damage over time and for flat damage. So yeah, you're teleporting non-stop, and every time you teleport you leave that field, and even if you leave for a moment, the enemy would die from the damage over time if you've teleported enough times next to the enemy. So you're supposed to be teleporting multiple times next to the enemy so that those damage over time fields can hit them. Try to teleport behind the enemy if he's charging an attack to avoid getting hit, of course. And another thing that helps with the synergy is Bel Khoradris gives us an aura of lightning strikes that do magic damage. Combining this with the Phoenix Herald staff, which does a fire AoE around us, we can take advantage of things like arcane secrets and other passives that increase the damage of magical spells, even some that increase the damage of fire spells. But the main point is we're trying to maximize our magic damage, and you're gonna see in the skills segment which passives and which synergies I'm talking about. So you're teleporting all the time and you're trying to spam those sigil fields. You're using the dome to make the enemy take more damage. It even helps you a little bit with your cooldowns. And in the meantime you're using Binding Light to regenerate energy, and you're using legendary healing and one of our passives to regenerate HP while using energy, which would be every time you use that teleporty skill. So that's pretty fun setup, and I hope a lot of you like it as much as I do. I wouldn't suggest going straight to Chaos 9 unless you gear up. In fact, it's probably better to do invasions and up to Chaos 8 with it, but the footage is on Chaos 9. So here is how I've decided to set up the skill points in this build. There's some wiggle room, you can change some things, but in general that's what we've got. So Phantom Blade Heroic, it comes from the Blade of Azyre. You have to wear the Blade of Azyre to have this skill. It's good, a little bit of extra damage reduction, and it also gives us energy gain when hitting enemies, and we can just weave it in between teleports when we need to gain energy. Then Breath of Fire is completely a thing that you can replace with whatever you want. Etheric Orb, Tornadoes, Etheric Ray, Phoenix Bulwark, anything you want there that you prefer could go there. Then Arcane Manifestation, it's good because it follows us around. If you don't like it, you can remove it, and then in the God Skills segment I'm gonna show you what to do if you remove the points, the 5 points spent into here. Then I'm gonna show you what to do with those. And Binding White Master is great because it gives us a little bit of energy regeneration and health regeneration while we stand in the field, as well as that magical explosion that knocks back enemies and slows them. And then the bread and butter of the build, Step Between Worlds Heroic, which comes from the heroic Bel Khoradris set. So this skill, as you teleport, you see you're leaving behind, not where you land but behind, a sigil, and this sigil does damage over time, and as you keep teleporting in one place can just keep leaving those in the feet of your enemies, and they will take a lot of damage over time, as well as base damage. And it's such a great skill. It gives you so good mobility that it's unbelievable. And as you're using this, thanks to our passives, you would see what's happening. I'm gonna demonstrate in a moment. So then you have Etheric Vortex mastered, which by the way burns the enemies, makes them take 30% more damage. It also gives us movement speed and cooldown time reduction, which we don't care that much about, but we still care about those. But yeah, don't really care much about the movement speed in general. The cooldown is nice though. Then what have we here? Quake Shield Masters gives us health regeneration. It heals us, and it also gives us, I think, 10% damage reduction bonus while we're using an energy consuming skill, which in this case would be Breath of Fire or Step Between Worlds. So as we're using this, we're healing, and we're also healing from legendary punishment, 50%, not legendary healing, my bad. With legendary healing we have 50% chance to heal ourselves for 10% HP, so we're healing from Quake Shield, we're healing from legendary healing when it procs. And what else is happening? We have Master of Equilibrium, which when consuming energy has a chance to reduce our cooldowns, and when you're using a spell with cooldown has a chance to regenerate energy. Let's quickly demonstrate it. So I'm gonna use this, and you can see how it regenerates energy. Not every time, but it does. And then let's start. See how when I'm using this, it skips in between the cooldown, sometimes speeds it up. So it speeds my cooldowns up. Pretty nice, pretty interesting synergy, and if you don't want it, you can remove some of the things that you've seen. Arcane Binding is nice, magical damage increases fire damage and vice versa. This does both magical and fire in rotation. This does fire and burns, this does fire and burns. This does fire, doesn't, actually burns. This one does magical. And this one is magical. So when you're using either of those 1, 2, 3, 4 skills, you can boost the Step Between Worlds heroic. Now burning enemies take more magical damage. We already told you which ones do burning, pretty nice, and I like it a lot. And then Quake Master is superior. Magical damage and magical spell energy generation are increased. So first of all we get 30% from here, then another 30 from here, and that's 60, and then another 20, that's 80. This one 90, and pretty much close to extra 100% damage. If you include that 30%, then we are 120% extra damage. I really like how this works. If you don't want that energy gain or that extra magical damage, you can replace it for other things. There's ways to include using padded armor, there's ways to implement duelist chain reaction, but if you implement duelist chain reaction, you have to make sure you're using Etheric Vortex and Blinding Light as much as possible, so you can keep that at 4 stacks for 400% crit damage. So there's many ways to modify the build. In the God skill segment you're gonna see what I suggest if you don't use Arcane Manifestation, how to squeeze more damage or crit damage or both out of the setup. Now let me quickly talk about the legendary ranks. You already saw legendary healing. I suggest maxing this one out in power and eventually building up the chance to at least 40, 45, if you can, even 50% if you can afford that. Something I like, legendary reinforcement. It gives us damage, it gives us damage reduction, and we do have 2 skills with cooldown to try and proc this. Eventually you might want to stick to legendary healing and reinforcement, maxing those out, but when you have some more points, then you can probably reduce some of the chance here and max out the power of crushing, and then maybe get a little bit of chance here. Alternatively, if you're doing easier content and you don't need crushing, get punishment. Max the extra damage taken to make it 50% more damage taken, and then get enough chance to make it proc often. you're damaging enemies all the time, so you don't need that high of a chance on this one. I think 30% is more than enough, because you have AoEs from the set, the whitenings that hit around us. This can hit, this burns and keeps proccing, and then as you teleport you have many hits per second, which means many chances to proc things per second. So that's it for the skills and passives. Again, a lot of wiggle room, a lot of things you can change to make the build your own. If you do, let me know how you prefer playing it. Now let's show you a little bit about the god skills I use. Now about the god skills, you already saw a little bit of glimpse of what we are taking. First of all, Arcane Manifestation is optional. Let's go through the other stuff and then tell you what you can do to replace those 5 points if you don't want Arcane Manifestation. The first thing we need is getting all the crit damage and other bonuses on the way here. Then on the other side we're grabbing Arcane Secret Superior and getting all the crit damage over here. And since I've got 3 points to spare, I thought the best place to spend them would be for 10% flat damage. Never underestimate flat damage. 10% flat damage should be better than 35, even maybe sometimes better than 70% crit damage. We have a what? We have 355, but if you wanna rework it, let's say we remove those points here, that's 5 points. So there's places to do that. Since we're using damage over time, I'd rather not take this note, but that's an option. So you have an option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, gives you 35 crit damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives you 33% damage, but it also gives you, instead of the 35 crit damage, it also gives you Arcane Secrets Mastered, and that gives you extra 10% flat damage, and then you need to rework the skills, so you're gonna have to rework some things to upgrade that. And right now I've got 8 points because the god skill is not there, so if you leave this as an open slot, you can by all means upgrade Arcane Secrets, and then you've got an interesting extra 10% damage and extra 35% crit damage, but you're losing that Arcane Manifestation, which again is just a suggestion. You don't have to be using Arcane Manifestation. I just like using it because it follows me around. You also get 5% max energy, which is pretty nice. Now we have those 10% damage here. You could try and sacrifice them for another 35% crit damage, but I'd strongly suggest just keeping those. Yeah, you do get 5% energy and another 2% damage, but it just doesn't seem worth it to lose, what is that, 12% damage and 5% energy to get what? 2% damage, 5% energy and 35 crit damage. But it's optional. I mean, keep experimenting, see what you like. Those are just some suggestions. Whether you like to play the build the way I do or not, it's up to you to find your preferred way, and just let me know what it is once you've done so. So enough about the god skills, let's move on to showing you a little bit about the items I suggest using for this build. The items you would need for this build are, first and most important, you need the Bel Khoradris Great Helmet. Even if you don't have Blade of Azyre, you can just use a basic Phantom Blade. That would cost 0 points instead of the heroic, so let's remove the Blade of Azyre just to show you. You would be using that one. It's not gonna give you the damage reduction, but it's still gonna allow you to get 8% energy, not 10. It's not gonna be that much damage either, but it's nice. So until you get Blade of Azyre, maybe that's what you would be using. Now let's equip it again. Let's put the skill back up and talk more about the other items. A phase shift amulet is amazing because a lot of the time you would be standing next to the enemies, and that means they will be taking more damage and you would take less damage from those enemies. Then we really need a Phoenix Herald. Phoenix Herald is an amazing synergy for the build. It gives you that fiery aura around you, it keeps burning enemies. So even if you didn't have this skill, even if you didn't have this skill or this skill to make the enemies burn, this would sort out the burning, and which would end up sorting out arcane secrets proccing. It's great, it gives you that little bit of extra damage, so it's pretty nice. Then what we want is for the rings. I really like crystaline ring. It's not the best one, but I like it because first of all it gives us more HP, and this build might be more on the squishy side because it doesn't have as much damage reduction, so a little bit of extra HP is nice, and it also gives us extra healing. This extra healing works on things like Quay Shield and on things like legendary healing, so 25% extra healing from those is nice. This can also stack up well with the healing and energy gain from here if you want it to, but I don't think we really need that, but just keep that in mind. Now, other rings we can talk about would be, if you think you can manage collecting Bloodlust Orbs, then Ring of Cain's Fury and Dragon Ring are nice for damage or damage reduction. This also gives you cooldown time, which you don't really need that much. This one is another amazing ring. It gives you extra healing when you crit, and it also gives you energy, so there's a chance to get energy and HP when you crit. Another thing that you might try, I wouldn't suggest Dragon's Blood Ring. It seems kinda glitchy, but because it says damage over time +6, and it shouldn't be +6, it should be plus maybe 60,000 or whatever. Here it should scale off of your damage over time. This is nice because it would give you damage over time after using archetype ability, and archetype ability is this: when you move a spell, such as the dome or any other spell that can be moved, spells with this blue circle on the icon, like this one. This is an interesting ring. I've not tested playing with it, but if you are wondering what it is, that's it. Another thing you can try is something like what was it, Ring of Denial. It would give you less damage, but it would give you 20% damage reduction and another 30% HP. This 30% HP can stack very well with this 25% HP. So yeah, you're gonna do 40% less damage, but the damage reduction and HP would be amazing. What else is nice? Ring of Radiance, I wouldn't suggest using it, but if you really want to be spamming those, if you use Duelist Chain Reaction, then you might consider that one. And then another thing you might want to consider would be another Chain Reaction if you're using that. Because if you're using that and you're using the Chain Reactions, first of all, Duelist Chain Reaction is nice, but another one that's nice is Veteran's Chain Reaction. Using a skill with cooldown cancels the energy cost of the next energy consuming spell and increases its damage. So after using this or this, you can get this to do double the damage. But the problem is that doesn't do that much damage anyways, and it's just gonna be for the next one cast. So I would suggest against using it, but keep it in mind, it's an option. So I think that's the good rings, that's the important rings worth mentioning. I would suggest staying away from Ring of Dexterity unless you really are using Phantom Blade more. And Old Ring of Resonance, there's only 2 skills that would be proccing this, so again I would suggest against that. Now for the amulet, as I said, Phase Shift amulet, it's the one you wanna use. When you're farming easier content, Amulet of Contempt is nice. Get a secondary set blessed with crit chance and get as much crit chance as you can, and then use this amulet for something like Chaos 4-5 invasions. You really won't need Phase Shift, you're gonna be doing enough damage and you won't need that damage reduction, so Contempt amulet is probably the best to farm in that case. Now let's talk about stats. What stats I recommend. On the helmet you want as high cooldown reduction as you can, regardless whether that build needs cooldown or not. Try to get good cooldown reduction on the helmet if you can. But you need really high HP, you need armor, and you need cost reduction. If you can get cost reduction, that is nice. It is amazing if you can get cost reduction. There's something I want to mention about cost reduction and healing, and that is if you are using this thing. Consuming energy heals all players, energy cost and damage are increased. So basically you can get 20% damage from this, but it gives you 50% energy cost, and more energy cost means more healing. The more energy you consume, the more you heal. That's kind of how this works, but I like to not use this one because I want to be spamming Step Between Worlds more, and that's why I don't like that energy cost, but keep that in mind. Cost reduction on any piece would be amazing. Even energy would be amazing, maximum energy. Then chest and legs, the exact same rules apply for those except no cooldown. So get as much HP as you can, as much armor as you can, then try to get cost reduction, and if you're lucky, get energy. Things like resistance to damage over time, health regeneration should be low on the priority list, but the lowest on the priority list should be counter attack damage and wood quality. Wood quality could be nice for your crit chance set, where you're using amulet of contempt. For the boots, the same rules, except you have movement speed bonus. Not sure whether you really need movement speed with this set, but it's always nice to have that little bit of extra movement speed. So for the gauntlets, a little bit different. Here you want number one priority, very high damage. Even if you don't have crit damage, damage is better. So 41% crit damage, 50% crit damage would not be anywhere near 6000 or even 3000 flat damage. So prioritize flat damage over crit damage if you're like wondering which one to take, the one with the crit damage or the one with the flat damage. Then you want damage over time as well. The way I'm playing the set, I play with damage over time blessings, so I'm stacking damage over time. So get damage over time, and damage over time you want to get only if you're doing damage over time setup. If you're not using damage over time blessings, just don't get it and prioritize HP and armor after the damage. But for me, I get damage over time, and then the second priority would be HP, third priority armor. Things like energy, cost reduction are great, but not the main priority for this piece. For the rings and the amulet, the exact same rules would apply for all three pieces. You want as high as possible crit chance. You want if you can get a little bit of cooldown reduction, but that's not gonna be the highest priority here. You want flat damage if you can get it. It's amazing to get some flat damage. You want some HP. Crit damage is nice to get, but it's not gonna be the main priority because you're not gonna be getting that much from an accessory. Armor is nice to get, it shouldn't be the main priority, but it's still nice to have it. And then things like energy or cost reduction, you can try and get them, they're not bad. Health drain on the other hand is amazing. And I think health drain should be on the rings and weapons, you can't get it on armor as far as I know. So those are my suggestions: crit chance, damage, HP, health drain, the main priorities, and then armor is not bad, energy is not bad, crit damage is not bad, armor piercing is not bad, but avoid wood quality unless going for a wood quality set, and avoid counter attack damage, and yeah, basically that's it. Even HP again you should try to avoid on those. It's a good stat, but not for this build. Now that brings us to the blade and to the staff. As you can see, the blade cannot get crit chance. You cannot get crit chance on blades. That's why you want crit chance on the staff. On the staff you want crit chance. Cooldown reduction is nice, but not the main priority, but still try to get it if you can. You want flat damage as well. Number one priority is crit chance, flat damage. Then number 2 probably should be cooldown, HP and crit damage and damage over time. You can see I'm using a shitty red one, but at least it's a very good wrote shitty red one. Decently wrote. All of the stats on it are worth keeping. That's why I'm using it. So yeah, there's more stats you can get, such as armor piercing, but it shouldn't be a big priority. And the crit damage shouldn't be priority here, whereas crit damage here is doubled. You can get like 80% crit damage on that on this one only 40. But on this one you can get crit chance, so on this one you would want the flat damage, the HP. Hopefully some cooldown reduction because you get a huge number here. And things like armor piercing are nice, and as I said, crit damage can give you a good number, so try to get those. Counter attack you wanna be avoiding on this one, so if I were to choose what to change on this one, I would probably get health drain instead of counter attack damage and keep all those other stats the way they are. Even damage over time would be nice, so one of those two would be what I would prefer. Ideally maybe instead of 12 armor piercing I would have damage over time, and then instead of counterattack damage, health drain to keep that sustain. So yeah, the only difference is this cannot get crit chance and this cannot get that high crit damage. Apart from that, the other stats, the same rules apply. So that ended up being a little bit longer. I ended up talking a little bit too much about small minor details you can change. So let's now move on to showing you some more footage of me playing the build and how to play it. As seen in the intro segment, you probably noticed that the build is not that difficult to play. You just have to pay attention because it's a little bit squishy and you have to get out of danger, and getting out of danger is easy, but the most important thing is energy upkeep, so you might want to weave in some phantom blades to regenerate energy in between the teleports, or you might want to take a few seconds when your energy is low after a fight just to replenish it, so you would have a lot of energy in the next fight. You would see sometimes I'm not really paying attention much to that and I end up not having energy, and then like now I have to just spend a few seconds standing in the binding white circle to regenerate energy and hitting enemies with basic attacks. So if you don't want this to happen, you have to kind of try to weave in some phantom blade attacks in between the teleports. Important is to use the dome on elites and bosses because it really keeps them burning to proc those passives, so they will take more magical damage, and it also makes them take 30% more damage just from them being under the dome. So it's definitely a fun build. I'm a big fan of it and I hope that you like it and maybe modify it to suit your preference, changing some of the gear or some of the passives or even the god skills. I hope the suggestions were enough. As you can see, it can be super speedy. If I were to focus on the main quest and I don't kill every single elite enemy I encounter, this could lead up to like 2-minute runs or so. Maybe even under 2-minute runs if you're lucky. I mean, on invasions I can definitely get under 2 minutes because I don't even need to stop, because enemies can get one shot in the easy invasions. That's why amulet of contempt is good for those. You can see I'm trying to stay behind those enemies that can have some nasty attacks, and I'm trying to pay attention where their attacks would be. So on boss fights you would see that I try to do the hit and run strategy, as I call it, which is you teleporting really quickly next to the enemy, regardless where, as long as it's near the enemy and he gets hit by this damage over time field, it's nice. And I'm trying to use binding white to regenerate while teleporting inside it, and then just stay away, let it take some more damage, and then maybe if needed repeat. And if you'd like to see more builds for this class on other sets or for other classes, just let me know which ones and which set I should prioritize. I'm planning on releasing some more builds, but it would be nice to know what my viewers would like to see first. So if you need help, hints, tips how to play this build or any of my other builds or any build in general on any character, feel free to hop over to my Twitch or YouTube channel. You can live chat with me, you can leave me a comment and I can reply to that comment when I'm available. You can also find me on my Discord server, link in the description for that, and you can always chat with me over there if you need some help with anything. If you enjoyed this video, you could subscribe to my channel to get notified for more content updates for games like Chaosbane, Torchlight 3, Wolves and Words of Mayhem, or other similar isometric footers, or as well sometimes for Borderlands 3 content. Thanks for watching the video, folks. Keep it cool. Until next time, and goodbye.